So I love blogging and talking about money. And then I began coaching. And I think what I really was drawn to was that human connection, because in my lab job, there would be days without me talking to a single soul, literally.
Welcome to the Engineer Podcast. That's engineer with a Jen, because I'm your podcast host, Jen. Now, this is a platform meant to add more soul to your STEM career. If you're a STEM student studying in nonstop stress, then listen to Jen's solo-style episodes where she uses her 5-year engineering degree to teach the inner work that you can do to study from soul rather than stress. And if you're a STEM student seriously questioning your career path, then listen to Jen interview previous engineers who switched from the traditional and aligned with the more soul-centered career field. Now follow me out of the fog and into your future. Let's listen in. Hello, everybody! Now, I know y'all have not heard me say that in a long while because this is my first episode back in like 10 freaking weeks. I'm sure you have an understanding of why that is. 1, COVID-19. 2, this is my graduating semester and I have been so freaking crazy busy. But I've still been trying to be active on Instagram, which is probably why you've came to this episode, because of the things that I've been posting on there. Today's episode could not make me more excited to promote. Kelsey is an amazing woman who started off as a chemical engineer and, like the title says, is making $10K every month in her entrepreneurial online money coaching business. This whole interview is going to be where Kelsey explains 1, the origins of her engineering career journey, 2, how she then chose to switch to HR, and 3, finally becoming a full-blown entrepreneur where this coaching business is her full-time job. To give you an idea of the authority she is in this finance money coaching industry, she paid off $20K of her student debt in just 6 months. Now, if you're a STEMie with student debt and you want to learn from someone like her, you are in so much luck because Kelsey has decided to give the Engineer Podcast followers an exclusive 40% off on her program. If you want to check that out, that link is in the show notes. You can also find Kelsey's social media and give her a DM so that you can understand how she can help you out. Really quick though, I do have something that I'm a little embarrassed to admit. When I recorded this episode, I couldn't find my mic because I had quickly moved out of my apartment in Pomona unexpectedly due to COVID-19, so I had to use whatever mic I could find, and apparently it wasn't the best. In fact, it was kind of janky, and you're gonna hear a little bit of some mic issues on my end, but it really doesn't take away from the message, and you guys seriously need to hear this STEM story because it's absolutely incredible. So if you just could give me a little bit of your grace, a little bit of your patience, a little bit of your understanding, that would be super appreciated because I truly want to get this story out to you. Why don't we go ahead and start the episode?
Hi, yeah, so thanks for having me, Jen. So I'm Kelsey. I graduated from University of Delaware in 2016 with a chemical engineering degree. And so, I majored in chemical engineering. It was a love-hate relationship, but I did end up graduating college with my dream job at the time, which was working in a lab on a green energy product. I mean, I went into engineering because I knew I wanted to make a difference in the world sustainably, or the environment, whatever, blah, blah. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I ended up finding my dream job doing research in a lab at a green energy company. And then as I started working, I realized that the corporate world isn't for me. There were a couple things we can totally dive into, but in my first job, I realized my job I had wasn't really my dream job after all. And so I completely switched careers to a human resources person, which is, I was a senior.
For the same company?
For the same company.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was like kind of a wild time. And then I ended up quitting that a year later to be an entrepreneur. So now I am a full-time money coach. So I know it sounds like a totally crazy,
Yeah, no,
trajectory.
seriously, that timeline is crazy. That trajectory is crazy. And in this interview, we're going to get super deep into it, how you made your decisions and why, and really get inspired by your story. I know for me, so I personally started this podcast because I have doubts myself of becoming an engineer. I'm not even an engineer yet. I'm in my 5th year of undergrad, graduating at the end of this semester. And I've known for like the last 3 years that this was not for me. But I've been denying it and kind of trying to convince myself because I have been working towards this goal for so long. And I don't know if this is true for you. I'm actually a first generation college student. I don't know how your family has impacted your journey of engineering, and I'm curious to know how they've influenced this journey for you.
Yeah, for sure. So both my parents did go to college. They actually met at the University of Maryland because they both studied computer science. So they're both
So
STEM
they're
nerds. So that's
STEMmies.
for
They're
sure. Yeah.
STEMmies. Okay.
Yeah. So they were computer science majors. So they for sure impacted me. But both of them were kind of like first generation college students for their family. So my mom, like my grandfather on my mom's side immigrated from China. My grandmother was born here, but she spent a lot of her childhood in China. So they really wanted, they had that whole like work hard, work hard, work hard, get an education.
Right.
Like they really instilled that mindset in my mom. So, my mom knew like I go to college and get a good degree and get a good job. Like that was like her path. And so she became very successful in her job. And same with like my aunts and uncles, like their siblings, they really instilled that in their kids. And then my dad, neither of my grandparents on his side went to college, but he's like white, German for technicalities, but white. Like they've been in America for like hundreds of years, whatever. But they grew up in like a really small town without much money. I know my dad sometimes mentions how like he didn't have heat as a kid sometimes, they grew up without a lot of money. Like my dad's parents, I don't think had the same mindset as my mom's parents, which was work hard, get an education, get a job. Like it wasn't that. My dad more, I don't know how. I would ask him this, like, Dad, like, what made you do that? Like, get out, because no one leaves that town, because, it's like a really small, like, close-knit town. But my dad just kept thinking, like, this can't be all there is. Like, I want a family where I can provide heat to them. So he would think, like, how do I get out of this? What's my way out? And he's like, well, I can go to college and get a degree. And he was really smart. So he just went and did that. So he became like the first in his family to kind of, it wasn't the same as like, like immigrating here, but no one in his family had gone to college. Education was a priority, but he took it upon himself to get an education. So, both of my parents with that kind of upbringing really instilled in me, like they never were like, you have to do this, but it was almost like unspoken. Like it was
I
just
totally
like,
get what you mean. It's just a cultural thing. Like there's no question that you're gonna go to college. Like that's just fact.
No. Like how you just know you go to 3rd grade and then 4th grade. It was
exactly. It was just a given.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I knew, it was never explicitly said, but I think I knew like I had to major in like a STEM degree. Like it didn't feel right to major in something else. I don't know. My parents never said explicitly like you have to be an engineer. They never mentioned that. They never said anything about that. But I think like subconsciously I felt, I don't want to say pressure because it's not true, but I just felt like it was like,
just the way things were valued. You just got the sense that like a STEM degree was a degree worth pursuing and other ones didn't feel as worth it. I totally understand that. So I have 2 older sisters. My oldest sister just passed the bar exam and is working as an attorney. And my other sister has been applying to PA school and currently works for like an eye doctor. And then I'm studying engineering. So we're like lawyer, doctor, engineer. Like same thing for me. There's just this idea of like, if I'm going to pursue a degree, it has to be a degree with weight defined by society. And so how did you end up, so from growing up in a STEM household, choosing chemical engineering?
So I actually grew up like super concerned about the environment. And I always wanted to make an impact. Like when I was like literally in second grade, I remember I would yell at my dad, like, because my dad like didn't care quite as much. So he would just sometimes he'd just throw like something like a Post-it note in the trash, whatever. But I would get so mad. Like if I saw a Post-it note in the trash, I'd be like, Dad, you have to recycle. What are you doing? And so from a young age, like it was always my passion to like do something for the environment. I knew that was what I wanted to do. And so when I got to high school, you know, and you start thinking about career and your major and stuff, I was really considering marketing, even to the point of like applying to colleges. I considered marketing because maybe from trying to convince my dad all my life, I felt like the problem that I needed to solve was convincing people to care about the environment. There was still so much news and whatever about people not believing in climate change. And it's like, well, how can you not believe in it? Because the climate is changing. Okay. So, but I felt like, okay, so maybe I need to do marketing to convince people. I was always very into persuasion and how can I best communicate this idea out to people. But then, you know, I guess the STEM part of me just kind of took over. It's also my senior year. I did really like math and I did really love chemistry. I was taking AP chemistry. And so I was like, well, what can combine those? So I really found chemical engineering. And so I was between chemical engineering and marketing, like the two like most opposite. But I ended up thinking like, you know, I'd rather go for chemical engineering right now and I can learn the root. This was all stemmed to my love of like helping the environment. So I like if I study chemical engineering, I can learn like the root cause of what's wrong. I can physically solve the problem. Then who cares about convincing people? I'll just go ahead and solve the problem. No one has to even think about anything or change their life.
Got it.
I'll just fix the problem. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll just do chemical engineering. I'll just single-handedly solve climate change.
By myself.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll just figure it all out. But I was also like, well, I can major in chemical engineering, at least go to class the first day. And if I end up hating it, I'll just switch my major or whatever.
Right. I totally understand what you're saying. So you actually walked in with it, giving yourself permission to change if you needed to.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's a huge mindset, like, contributor. Because I know for me, like, part of the reason why I can't let it go is because I actually chose engineering when I was 13. And, like, when I started to doubt it in my 20s, I was like, this is all I know. This is all I've chosen to study since 13. I don't even know what I would be interested in if it wasn't this. And so I think that's, like, a really big inspiration for me. Like, you just gave yourself permission to switch from the bat. Not saying that wasn't hard to switch, but yeah, when did it start where you realized like, okay, this isn't exactly for me? Was it when you were studying it, or was it when you actually got the job and the whole environment was completely different?
It was both. I mean, as I was studying it, I liked it because I do like math and science. So I do like it. And I really I think more so than math and science specifically, I really like problem solving. And I think that's what makes me a really good entrepreneur now, because I like to solve problems. But I was studying it, I liked it, but I mean, I didn't like the time commitment. Like, it wasn't even the work. I just didn't like sitting down to do the work. I didn't like always having to be stuck in the computer lab when my friends were out at bars. Like, because my roommate, yeah, so annoying. I always tell my friends, you could be a chemical engineer, like, because people are like, oh, that's so hard, and I'm like, it's not so hard. It's just a lot of time. Like, it's hard because you have to put in the time to learn concepts that take time to learn because they're very foreign. But
correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes engineering feels like your whole life is on hold, right? Like you're just an engineer all the time, and you have all this work all the time, and even when you're on a break, you're thinking of what you have to do or how long it's going to take, or I don't know. It kind of sounds like we both experienced that with our work.
There was one time in senior year, this was like the pivot. So freshman, sophomore year, I liked engineering. I didn't love the time, but I liked it. I don't know. It was good enough for me, I guess. And then junior year, I was like, oh man, okay, this is getting to be so much.
So is that when you reach like upper division classes, like junior year? So like the real engineering shit?
It was, yeah. And the way University of Delaware works is there's a class called, or like there's junior lab. I'm sure every college has something similar, but there's junior lab, but everyone calls it J lab with hate. So everyone's like, oh, wait till you get to J lab. Like that's what it was known for. And they're right. It was the worst. And so like J lab was known for having impossibly hard projects because they want to test you. Like they want you to prove to yourself that you're a good engineer. So it's like hours and like nights in the lab. And I was just like, oh my God. And that's when I was like, oh, this is so miserable. But at the same time, it's like, well, I'm already a junior, second semester, so I can't change my major now. Like,
right.
I almost wanted, even though it was so miserable and I didn't want to do it, at that point, I'm like, okay, but like, I just have to finish it out.
I fully resonate with that. Dude, you have no idea. So I actually went to community college. And so for the first 2 years of community college, I didn't touch engineering at all. It was all math, physics, chemistry, and like GEs. So I didn't touch engineering. And then junior year, my third year, I transferred to a state school. And that's when I started touching the engineering. And I was like, I don't really like this, you know? But I didn't figure that out until the end of my third year. And I was like, well, I literally only have a year and a half left. It would be dumb not to finish. Like, I've gone through all of this. Like, I almost felt like I had to finish. So it kind of sounds like you felt the same way. You're like, I'm so close. Maybe I don't like it, but I have to finish.
Yeah, I felt like I had to. But yeah, it kind of clicked. I guess I also, even though I was like a little bit miserable, I didn't realize, I thought I just didn't like, for a long time, I just thought I didn't like the homework. And I thought I didn't like the time, as I've been saying. But then there was like one time, like, so senior year, one of my like, really best friends, who was also one of the like smartest people in the class, we were in the computer lab and we're doing some homework assignment, and he's like, you know, this is the first homework assignment that I really just am not enjoying. And I'm like,
the first?
Yeah, the first. And it was like second semester, senior year, or first semester, whatever. But I was like, this is the first assignment that you haven't enjoyed. And he's like, yeah, like, you know, like, because the other problem sets are like practice. And I was like, the first, like, that was so mind-blowing. That was so mind-blowing that I was like, okay, yeah, engineering's not for me, maybe.
Yeah, you're like, shit, I've been miserable longer than the average engineer. Like, maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
So
I know. I was actually voted, well, I don't know if I want to admit this, but it's okay. I'm already saying it.
It's a safe space, don't worry.
So our class was really close, like our class as a whole. And so at the end of the year, at the end of senior year, we have superlatives that we give out. Okay. So there were a bunch of superlatives, and I thought I was going to win, or I didn't think I was going to win any, because there's none that I felt like were like so obviously me, but like there were for like some other people, but I didn't think I was going to win any. But if there was one I was going to win, it was person most likely to be found at Grottos, which was our popular bar. And I know that that was true because I was always at this bar. Like I was always, I don't know, like I was always there. So I'm like, okay, I know I'm most likely there because I'm always actually there and I never see any of these other engineers there. So, So I'm like, okay, so if I did win any, it would be this one. But instead, I actually won. I was shocked, least likely to be an engineer. And I was like, oh no.
Was that offensive, so, like, or was that like, you know what? Thank you for proving to me that this wasn't for me. How did that feel?
I don't know, because, okay, so the person I had voted for that award just was like this surfer dude, like just seemed like he wanted to surf and skateboard and do those kinds of things instead of like study. He wasn't like a bad engineer. He just totally had those other vibes. And then when so we're at the ceremony and the person giving out the awards, the MC is like, and you know, like kids talk, like I talked to my friends, they're voting for this guy. So I was pretty sure this other guy was going to win. But I guess they all lied to me. I don't know, because like then the MC's giving her little speech before every award, and they're just like, this is least engineer, and they're like, it doesn't mean you're stupid. This is not offensive. It means you're cool. Okay. And I'm like thinking like, what? Like I wasn't really listening.
You're not really listening. It's kind of passively going through your ears. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, because like, it's true. Like I didn't think of this person who I did vote for as stupid. He was just not engineer.
Not gonna be an engineer. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she's like, Kelsey Yeager. And I was like, what? Like I was shocked when they called my name, and I walked up and it was like such a surprise. I guess I was partly flattered that my classmates thought of me as like something. And but then, even though I never thought the award was for people that are stupid, in that moment, that was the other half of my mind, like, wait, should I be offended? Like I wasn't going to be offended until your speech is like, don't be offended. And so then I was like, wait, what? So I still don't know how I feel about the award, but in the end they were all right, because
look at you now.
So
you are a finance wealth coach. Yes, utilizing social media. I love it.
Exactly.
So that's crazy. So you feel like that moment was kind of like confirmation for you, or at least it's like a milestone that you can remember where your mindset was like,
I almost feel like it was less confirmation and more like a new path. I don't know, like every time I did something in the future, I did kind of think of that award, and I'm like, well, I guess I was least likely to be an engineer anyway, so this move is fine.
Okay. In a way, it almost gave you more permission. You're like, well, I can confirm this, and I'm going to run with it.
Right.
So then from there, like you said, you started working for a green energy company as an entry-level engineer. So how was that journey? And then how did it transition into human resources?
I know, they're like so different. So I started, like I said, I worked in a lab. So I was an engineer in a lab. And I thought when I first joined that it was the best job ever. Like I really did love it. And because it kind of gave me that, I've always loved problem solving, right? And it kind of gave me that outlet. Like I could be creative. I've also always been like such a creative person. If money were never an issue, I would literally have like been a painter. Like I love like being creative. I don't know. So like the research in the lab kind of was that for me. Like I got free reign. I had a really great boss who just let me do whatever. Like, I mean, not literally whatever, but they'd be like, okay, here's the problem, figure it out. And then I just got to like kind of play in the lab and manage my own experiments, manage my own time. There wasn't very much like, I wasn't micromanaged at all like that first year. And I really loved it. I was learning a lot. I was hands-on. I felt like I had lots of responsibility. And like there was, so I don't want to make the company sound bad, but there weren't that many regulations in the lab. Like I was responsible for my own safety. So there wasn't someone like watching over me being like, you have to do this and this and this and this before you can touch this. Like, so I got to jump into everything like right away. And our company was relatively new at the time, so there weren't policies and procedures. So I got to make those. I had so I had so much responsibility, authority, creativity. I really loved that first year. It was a great job. And then as time wore on, if you've ever done research, as you probably have if your audience is engineers, but research doesn't work that well. So
it never works out the way you want it to.
Never works. It gets old when none of your experiments are working and you don't know why. I would get frustrated because nothing was working. And, we got like a new boss who was a lot more micromanagery and had more focus on our factory than the research I was doing in the lab. So I began to feel really unimportant and undervalued, and my experiments weren't working anyway. So I didn't really have a stance to be like, no, you should totally value me. Look at all the
right. I get you.
Yeah. So then it made me like doubt myself, like not like in a bad way, but just kind of like, where am I going? Like, what's the point? Like, are my experiments randomly going to work? Like, do I want what would I rather be doing than this? And so when that happened, it kind of started planting those seeds. Like, would a different career be
better suited?
Like, where do I, yeah, because it was good that first year, but I mean, where do I want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? And I started asking myself those questions, and I started looking at other people in the company, because my specific position, like, I was the only person in the lab most days. I had, which I loved, that responsibility and like authority, and like, you know, this was my space, but that means all other 100 people in the company were doing like different jobs. And so I would look at their jobs and think, do I want that? And no, every person was a no. I didn't see my career progressing, and I didn't want to be in their shoes. And I couldn't even think of one thing that I would rather be doing than the job I currently had. So
yeah,
that really made me question, like, okay, well, now what?
And how old were you at this time? Just out of curiosity.
So I graduated at 22. So I worked for a year, loved it. And then like that second year, when I was like 23, I began to get those, you know, seedlings of doubt in my mind. And it was the job now, but I'd always had problems with the corporate life. So everything was kind of culminating together. I was really questioning my job now, but I had never really loved corporate life. I'd never loved being forced to be in the office. I'd never loved waking up early every day. I never loved having to do projects that I didn't care about just because
someone were paying you. Yeah, someone told you to. Right. I totally agree with that.
It began to, like, at first it's okay because you can find I was learning, I was growing, but after you do the same experiment over and over and over for like 2 years, it's like, okay.
Yeah, you're like, is there more for me in my life than just this routine all the time? Like,
exactly. So I really found oh my God, there's like so many thoughts in my head at this time. So I guess
I'll just let it out.
I'm like, there's
no right or wrong. It's just your life story.
As I'd work in the lab every day, I was the only one in there. So to occupy myself, I would listen to a lot of things, Taylor Swift a lot, and also books and podcasts. And I began to listen to a lot of self-development books and podcasts. And I learned a lot about everything. I was kind of just soaking it all in. I learned a lot about different side hustles. I was constantly looking for like side hustle. I was also learning about the FIRE movement, which stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And that idea really sounded interesting to me because the basis is you save a lot of money and invest it. And then once you have a certain amount, you can live off that nest egg forever. So the amount is usually 25 times your annual spending. So for a lot of people, it's about $1 million or 1.25 million, which sounds like a crazy amount, but
doable, reachable.
Yeah, like it really only takes, let's say, 20 years. It's different for every person, but if you save 50% of your income, it will take you 17 years to get to that 50% amount, to get to your nest egg amount. Mm-hmm. So again, it's different per person, but general timelines, that's what it is. So I was like, okay, so I could retire in 17 years if I just save this money. And I was like, that's doable. That's so doable. Saving 50% from my engineer salary. Like, it wasn't tons, but it's not like scraping the barrel. Like, I was making a good amount for my job. I was living in kind of a high cost of living area in Connecticut, but I could make do. I mean, whatever, it's just me. So I really began focusing on finance. I was looking for a side hustle. I fell in love with the idea of blogging. That was the one I decided on after a while. And I decided to blog about personal finance. So I was doing this on the side. And then as I kept blogging, and this was like my third side hustle, but whatever.
Yeah, that was the one that you stuck with.
Yeah. So I love blogging and talking about money. And then I began coaching. And I think what I really was drawn to was that human connection, because in my lab job, it was me in the lab.
Oh my God, that's so right.
Yeah. Well, I loved the creativity of being able to like make my own experiments and manage my own time. I was craving that human connection. there would be days without me talking to a single soul, literally. And I was craving that connection. So I think that's what really drew me to coaching. So I became a money coach. That's how I became a money coach. It's so much less about the money for me, and it was about the freedom that having that money could give me. I knew I wasn't sure. I knew engineering probably wasn't for me, but I didn't know what was for me. I knew I didn't love the corporate life, but I didn't know what else I could do. But I saw having a lot of money as a path to freedom where I could have more choices. I wouldn't be chained to a job if I could make money off the dividends of my own nest egg. I would not be chained to engineering if I could make at least a livable income from my investments and then just get like a part-time job doing something I really was passionate about, or not passionate about, but I don't have to work as much. Like, I just felt like this opened, it was so exciting knowing this avenue could open so many options for me. So I was drawn to that personal finance side. And then the coaching, I was drawn to working with people closely. I loved talking to people. I loved working one-on-one with people. And so in my career, then I realized this because I did a lot of thinking about what makes me happy, what would make me happy. If I'm not loving this job and I don't think engineering is the answer, what the heck else do I do? What's another? I don't know anything. I didn't even know, I knew I didn't want to do engineering. I didn't even know how to search for another job. And so all of this is going on. This is a crazy year in my life.
Yeah.
I went to some college recruiting fairs to recruit other college students, and I loved that. It was perfect. I got to talk about the products because I am passionate about green energy. I got to talk about my job. I got to recruit people that I felt like would be a perfect fit. And this was my dream. I mean, I went to a couple of colleges and it was amazing. So I kind of got the idea, hey, maybe I would like to do more of this, and maybe
that's the HR side.
But
Got
I felt
it.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes with, like, you were saying, like, in the beginning, you liked marketing like getting people to know about green energy. And so you're like, wait, I have the expertise now in this area and I can advocate for it and bring people into it. So you're like, HR.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So HR seemed like the perfect fit, and it's scary to make that career change. HR makes a lot less money, and which is fine because they still make a good amount of money. I mean, a livable salary. It's not like I'm totally just going crazy here, but they make a lot less money, and I wasn't sure how much less at my company. And it was scary to go to the HR department in a company and say, I want to work for you, because what if my boss found out? And what if they said no? What if I can't get this job? So I'm sitting on this idea. I'm thinking like, okay, I think I want to work in HR. I like the recruiting. How do I bring this up? I don't know if I want to do this. I'm scared to leave engineering behind forever. What if I do want to do it again? I'm terrified to do this whole new thing, but I really hit a point in my job where I'm like, well, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
It just got to the point, like, I was so sick of it. A couple other things had happened in the company, and I was just so sick of what I was doing. I was like, I know that I can't do this.
Like, you experienced so much pain that you were like, I'm at my pain threshold. I'm changing no matter what. Like,
I was at the point, it got to the point where like, I could just quit. Like, I just want to quit now. So it's like, okay, if I'm going to quit anyway, I might as well just ask for this other job. Worst case scenario, I don't get it, and then I just quit like I already was planning to. So I'm just going to ask. So also, the other thing that pushed me in that direction, which I really feel like, because I had put a lot of thought into this, like I'm saying it to you now, but remember, this is every single day of me going into the lab for 8 hours thinking, I don't like this. What else can I do? I could picture myself in HR, and me visualizing myself in HR for 8 hours a day, every single day for 40 hours a week and more on the weekends. Like, this is
a life decision. It's in your mind every second, and you're constantly thinking, like you said, you're a problem solver. You're constantly thinking like, what can I do? Where can I go? What am I gonna, like, I can totally picture it. Like,
totally. Exactly. So I'm visualizing this every day, and then one person in HR who was totally terrible got fired. And so I was like, oh, okay, there's an opening.
I almost feel like you manifested this with your
Yeah,
visualization.
so that girl got fired. Okay, now there's an opening. I'm like, now this, because before I was toying with the idea and now it was a reality. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, I gotta go to HR and ask for that girl's job. And I was kind of like monitoring our company's website as well. Like, okay, I'm like
Girl,
looking.
you were really thinking of
Yeah,
everything.
right. I'm like, should I do this? I'm like looking for the job. And then a week later, a different person gets fired. And in HR, there's only 5 people in the HR department. 2 are down. So the first girl gets fired, but she was like a temp. So
Yeah.
I mean, what happened there? And then the second person got fired, but he had worked there for like 20 years. But he was also kind of a bad employee. So I'm like, okay, but I'm like,
yeah, you're like, I have leverage now. They need me.
I'm like, okay, so now they're 2 people down. They only have 3 people. They need me. I'm like, okay. So I'm like monitoring the website. This is going on. The next week, week 3, the director of the department, the highest person in the department, gets fired. She was horrible too, but she got fired. But she's the director. So I'm like, this is not real, because she was so bad. We all hated her. She was the worst person.
I love your honesty.
Yeah, so bad. And she actually got fired. And it's hard to fire directors because especially the director of HR, who is the one who hires and fires people.
Exactly. What the hell?
To get rid of them. But she got fired. So now I'm like, this is the universe speaking to me. Like, this is the universe.
It was like, how many signs are you going to take? I gave you 1. I gave you 2. I now gave you 3. Like, are you going to take it?
Exactly. Like, the first girl getting fired was like, whoa, wow, that's crazy. But 3 people total out of 5, including the director getting fired, was like an unignorable sign. I was like, I manifested this opportunity. This is the universe opening this pathway for me. I have to take it. I don't have another option. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to ask for this job. And there was no job postings online. But I'm like, okay, but at this point, they need people.
You know it. Yeah, so exactly.
They don't have the time to create that posting. Like, they need people. There's no excuse. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I'm like, I get up from my desk like a couple days later, not the exact day she gets fired, but I get up from my desk and I'm like, today's the day. I have like this whole pitch planned in my head. I had been preparing. I'm like, okay, here's my value. And I'm walking past the HR office and I'm like, I'm going to go in, but I get way too scared and just like walk right past, because the bathroom's like on the other end. So I'm like, I'll just pretend I'm going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm like in the bathroom, like,
should I do it?
I'm like, okay, now's the time. And I walk back again, but I chicken out and I walk right past the office. And I'm like, oh. So I go back to my desk and I'm like just terrified. I'm like shaking. And finally I'm like, Kelsey, like, this is a sign from the universe. You can't ignore this sign. This is meant for you. There's no chance you can fail. Even if you do fail, who cares? You're going to quit anyway. So it doesn't matter if you fail. Second of all, right. You cannot fail. Like, this opportunity is for you. So I'm like, okay. So I walk past the third time and I walk in and there's like the girl sitting at the desk and I'm like, hey, I was just wondering, like, can I have a job in HR? And she's like, in our HR department? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, I mean, I'll talk to my manager, because he's the only other person in the department
who's left. Yeah.
Like, we'll talk and then we'll get back to you. But sure. And I'm like, okay, cool.
And you didn't tell your boss, like, you just you just asked.
Yes. Because I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't know. I didn't want to start drama if I wasn't even going to get the job anyway. So
I totally got you.
Yeah, but luckily, like, everything worked out. They did give me the job. They did have to beg my manager in the engineering department to let me go, but they did give me the job, and it really, I did love HR. I love working in HR. If I were to go back and get a full-time job, I would go.
That's what you would do.
Yeah, it was really great. But,
yeah. But so at this time, were you still a money coach?
Yeah, so I was
So that was your side hustle, but then you were full-time HR.
Yeah, I did actually kind of take a little bit of a break when I first started in HR, because I truly loved it. So since I loved it, I wanted to work at my job. So I was putting in the 10-hour days, the 12-hour days. I was working because I loved it. So I didn't take on like more clients for a while because I was focusing on my full-time job. But then a new boss, like they hired a new director eventually, and he was okay. I'm not here to say bad things about him, but it just made me realize corporate life isn't for me. And then, yeah, here I am.
Yeah, no, you totally sound like an entrepreneur. It's just like when the person above you doesn't give you the environment that you need, like you can't see yourself in it. And you're like, I'm just going to work for myself if the person above me is the reason why I have issues. Because every time you named an issue, it had to deal with the higher up. So it wasn't exactly like the work, it was the environment itself.
Yeah, I'm very like, I have never in my life, literally as a kid, like I never was good at doing things that people told me to do just for the sake because they told me to do them. Like, I don't know if you've read the book, The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin, but the four tendencies are like your motivators. So it's like 4 different ways people are motivated. So there's like I'm a questioner, and that means that you're motivated.
Oh, I might have. Is obliger one of the options? I'm an obliger.
Yeah.
Okay, that's me.
Oh my God, yeah. So you know, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I do know. I didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah, the 4 tendencies. So yeah, an obliger is like you're motivated from other people telling you what to do.
Right, and that's not you. You're the opposite.
No, I'm a questioner. I don't care. It's like I'm upholded. I do things because I told myself to do them, but more so because I have to question why. Why?
There has to be like a deep purpose. Like, why am I doing this? For what? Like, there has to be deep reasons.
Exactly. So I will literally spend like hours diving into like alien abductions on a random day if that's what I felt like I was interested in. Like, I'm not saying there's a good reason to the why.
Right, but the questioning is always there.
It's a reason that I found valuable on that given day.
In that moment in time.
Corporate world. So if my boss is like, do this project, and I'm like, why? Like, that's all. And then he's like, because of this. And I'm like, but why? Like, this makes so much more sense. But you can't, that's not always how it works. So yeah, eventually I'm like, okay, like I just need to work for myself. This money coaching thing, my side hustle was also blowing up. I was making way more money. I knew if I quit my job, I could make way more money. So I'm like, okay, I'm just.
Yeah. I think it's important to kind of let the audience know, like, one, so from your page, I did your 7-day freebie challenge.
Yay.
And so from that, I learned that you paid off all your student debt, which was around $30K in less than a year. Am I correct to say that? Yeah, almost mainly in 6 months. So this truly shows your authority in this finance realm. And then, to my understanding, your Instagram has blown up, and something that you also kept saying, like, around this was happiness. You're like, I just want to be happy. I want to create a life where I feel good. And the name of your company is On My Way to Happiness. Yeah. So I love that. And I want you to talk more about that. So you kind of had this side hustle. You're working full-time as HR, your side hustle's starting to blow up, and then we're in March of 2020. To my understanding of your social media, you quit your 9-to-5 in January. So it's only been like 2 months, right? So let's dive into that. Where did that transition happen and how did it feel?
Okay, so oh my God, again, I feel like my life has just like been so crazy the past couple of years. But okay, so when I found the FIRE movement, I mentioned you guys, I found the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I believed if I amassed a huge sum of money in a nest egg, I could live off that money and I wouldn't have to work. Everything I did stemmed from the fact of not having to go to work every day. So that was always my motivator. How do I stop working? But it wasn't that I didn't like working, because if that were true, then why would I spend every single evening after work for 3 years building up a side hustle?
On your side hustle, right? Exactly.
So I'm like, in truth, I was working like 14-hour days every single day for 3 years. It's not that I didn't like working. I just wanted to work on what I wanted to work on and not what other people wanted me to work on. So for maybe a year or 2 years, I was focused on building this investment nest egg, which first included paying off my debt. So I got so serious about paying off my student loan debt. I did everything possible to pay it off fast. I had $30,000 of student loans when I graduated. I paid off the first $10,000 over like a year and a half time frame before I cared about money. When I first got my job, I was loving my job. I didn't care about anything. So I paid the minimum payments. And then when I had about 20,000 left was when I was like, okay,
holy
I need to
shit.
I'm like, let's get this going. So then when I took that seriously, I put every dollar, every moment I had towards paying off my student loan debt. And then I paid off the last $20,000 in just 6 months. So that's gone. Yay. Now I can focus on my massive nest egg. But as I was doing this, I realized that, you know, the thing I wanted wasn't not to work. It was just to work on stuff that I
am happy about.
Yeah. So it began to feel like, okay, so I could retire in 40 years. That would be very bad. That sounds miserable. Cannot do. So the FIRE movement allows me to retire in about 17 years. Okay, that is much, much better. But that still felt very long. When I'm thinking in my head, I cannot come to work tomorrow because I'm so miserable. How can I wait 17 years? So it became to a point where it's like, okay, I need to get the show on the road. What can I do to get financial freedom faster?
Now.
And yeah, like what can I do now? So I became really serious mid 2019, so last year, on my side hustle. I'd been working on it for a while, but it was more for fun to see what it could be. I wasn't so serious about it till last year, and I was like, no, this side hustle is working. I'm working myself out of a job. This is it. And it was when I decided that my like everything kind of took off. I mean, I realized everything we do is to be happy, right? I think everything everyone does is to be happy. Even if you think, oh, I want to pay off my debt, it's because you think by paying off your debt, you will feel less stressed and you will be happier. Or, oh, I want to get this job at NASA, whatever. Okay, well, that's because you think getting a job at NASA will give you the money, the prestige, the life, the exciting, fulfilling work, because that will make you happy. Everything we do is stem from being the happiest you can be. So I thought about, okay, so why am I chasing happiness so bad? Like, what is it that I feel like I'm not having right now? What is it that I could do in my future life? And it was that I began to find that happiness inside of my side hustle too. It was blowing up because I found it was like, I loved coaching people. I loved transforming their lives. I love having clients and watching them go from, this is a true story, but one of my clients was like, she would literally text me and be like, I don't know what to do. I have like $100. Like, I just took it out from the bank. Should I put it back in the bank? Should I go to dinner with my friends? Like, what should I do with it? And now she's paid off over $50,000. She's cash flowed trips. She's cash flowed surgery.
You're literally giving me chills. Like, I hope you know that.
Yeah, she's like completely transformed her life. She now will literally text me and be like, oh, like, I just got a bill for like $3,000. I guess I'll just pay it, but I'm annoyed. Like, you know, like now she has so much more freedom in her money, where before it was like full on panic mode.
Over full fear.
Bill. Yeah, where now it's like,
I can handle $3,000.
Yeah, so it's like that. I love watching that shift in people.
Yeah, something that I've noticed in your work is like, you don't just give people tips on financial freedom. It's like you really go to the root money mindset and you shift it and you try to get them to have a sustainable understanding of their finances. Even, in my opinion, you can correct me, it even has like soulful undertones, like a little bit of spirituality, like purpose in it. You have such a like deeper connection to this other than just financial.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that and you got that from my page. Sometimes I doubt myself because I'm like, oh, maybe I don't give enough like tips, because I feel like I barely ever give tips because I want my page to be more about the meaning. The point of the tips is so that you can save money, so that you can have your own little nest egg, so that you don't have to feel so stressed, so that you're on your way to happiness. Like
the core of it is you want to make people happy, and you know that your zone of genius is in finance, and that's how you can make people happy. And I think that's why you can manifest and blow up to like over 7K people on Instagram, because like your why for doing this comes from like a a really positive place. It's wanting to make people happier. And so like that just attracts people to your page, like me specifically. And like, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I feel like it is. Okay, say what you want about engineering. Maybe it's for all of us, I don't know, but I do feel like engineering is one of the most worthwhile degrees you can get because you learn how to problem solve. There is no better way to learn how to solve problems than going to school for engineering. And I feel like I took what I learned in engineering and I learned how to like engineer happiness. I took, in my job.
I love that.
Yeah. So at my company, we made these power plants. And so when something goes wrong, we'd have like RCA meetings, which stand for root cause analysis. So we'd want to find the root cause of what went wrong. And we'd often make fault trees. So it would be like, okay,
right. Yeah,
the thing isn't working. Why? And it's like, okay, it could be the machine itself. It could be like it could be like the heat exchanger, the water cooler, the tubes, the natural gas going in, whatever. Like you break it down and then it's like, okay, well, it can't be this because it can't be this because. And so I think I did that for my happiness. You can do it too. Like anyone listening, whatever. Think of your happiness as the overall thing. It's broken. Why don't you feel so happy? And then break it down into categories. And I think important categories that lead to our happiness are health, physical, mental, emotional health, but physical and mental health, your finances, your relationships, and your fun. Yeah. So 4 categories, or like not so much your fun, but like your free time, your leisure. What are you doing in that time? And what I found when I broke these down for myself, so make a fault tree. Your broken happiness is at the top, and then there's 4 categories. And what I found for myself in health, I would be like, oh, my physical health is like fine, could be better, I guess, but I don't have time to go to the gym as much as I want to. Or my relationships, I'd be like, yeah, I have friends, but they live in other states. I don't have time to see them as much as I want to. And then like fun, it's like, well, I don't have the time. And it was like, okay, so there's a common theme here. How do I get more time? It's not having to go to this stupid job anymore. And then it's like, okay, well, how can I get out of this job? And then it's like, okay, well.
And then there's another tree and you like.
Yeah. And then it's like a whole path. So I feel like maybe going to engineering school, majoring in engineering teaches you how to have that kind of logical thinking and like problem solving towards everything, including happiness.
I absolutely love the way you broke that down. Like that is so true, because one of the things I did, like the reason I named my podcast Engineer Podcast, my name is Jen. I'm an engineer, and like I always, like I said, I chose this at 13. I always had this fear of like, who would I be if I wasn't doing engineering, because I had chosen that as part of my identity at such a young age. And so to kind of remind myself, like, Jen, your engineering years are not wasted. This is a part of you for the rest of your life. You have spent more than 5 years down this track and learning this thought process. Like, you're going to take it with you no matter where you go. The way you think is because of this degree. And even if you're not doing engineering, it's going to show up in your life. So you don't have to fear that you're not going to be this engineer anymore. And so that's exactly what you just said. You're like, I'm not an engineer anymore, but it's 100% part of how I think and how I engineer my life.
For sure. You will always, even if you're not engineer by career title, like you will always be an engineer.
What is one piece of advice you would give to engineers questioning their direction? And that's how we'll kind of close this whole interview, with that one golden piece of advice.
For sure. I truly believe in all my heart that everything happens for a reason. And I know it sounds so cliche, and I want to think of a better way to say that sentence that doesn't sound quite as cliche, but seriously, everything happens for a reason. So if you're in engineering right now and you're questioning it, that doesn't mean you made a wrong decision. It doesn't mean you're doing something bad and you should have done something else. That's not true. Engineering, I really believe, is the best place to learn, because you learn how to problem solve. You're not in one of those other majors, no offense to other people, that you could just Google all the information. Okay, so like where you're like literally learning how to problem solve, and that will only help you in life. So whether you decide to take a completely different career path or get out of engineering or whatever, remember that like you're here for a reason and you're setting an amazing foundation for the rest of your life. Don't think of it as a wrong path. It's just a building block onto an even greater path.
Thank you. Thank you. I needed to hear that. Like, screw if the audience needed to hear that. I needed to. You just gave me advice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. I really appreciate you giving me your time, and I'm just so honored to share your story on here. And we're going to close this episode. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It was so much fun.
And so it is. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Engineer Podcast. I hope you feel a lot more aligned to take inspired action. Please join us on our Instagram every Monday to set a soulful STEM statement. And did you know that when you subscribe or rate and review or even join our email list, you get freebies sent directly to you? Just head over to our website, www.engineerpodcast.com, for more info. I'll see you next time, STEMmies. Bye for now.